The content of this video, as well as the thoughts, views, and opinions expressed herein, belong to the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the views of Brigham Young University or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Hi, I'm Amy Harris. I'm a professor in the history department here at BYU, and I'm the family history program coordinator for our bachelor's degree in family history. I'm an accredited genealogist with a specialty in Britain. And today we're going to talk about family history and what you do when all the, quote, easy stuff is done. In other words, when technology no longer brings you answers, records, or names, where do you go next? This outline just gives you a sense of where we're going today, what hinting can do for you, what it can't do for you, how it works, and then resources to go beyond hinting. And then we'll do a short case study. So I liked this image that PowerPoint just brought up automatically for me, where it shows a bunch of points being connected by lines, and then some points that aren't yet connected. I think this is a good visual for what hinting can do and can't do for you. There is data out there about your family, about your ancestors, that the hint function can't get to without help from you. So once you've explored the connections technology brings to you, you can then draw your own lines based on your own research and your own spiritual promptings. We're going to start with a quote from Elder Irene, which is my favorite standard for family history research because I think it applies to anybody, no matter what their skill or experience level is. This is from April of 2017. Just a few weeks ago, I was working on my family history with a consultant by my side and another helper on the phone. On the computer screen before me was a problem beyond my mortal power to solve. I saw two names, sent to me by the wonders of technology, of people who might be waiting for a temple ordinance. But the trouble was that the names were different, but there was a reason to believe they might be the same person. My task was to determine what was true. I asked my consultants to tell me. They said, "No, you must choose." Way to go, brave family history consultants telling an apostle that. And they were completely sure I would discover the truth. The computer, with all its power and information, had left me the blessing of staring at those names on a screen, evaluating the available information, seeking other research, praying silently, and discovering what was true. As I prayed, I knew with surety what to do, just as I have in other situations when I needed to rely on heaven's help to solve a problem. This is a model anyone can follow. He went to the edge of his knowledge. He said he sought other research, went through what technology had brought him, and prayed to discover the truth. The more skilled you become at using the technology and at finding family names and family information on your own, with practice and training, you can go even further. The Spirit will always guide you, and you can always gain more skills. But no matter where you are, you can be at this spot, where you use the skills you have, the helps provided by technology, and the Spirit to go forward. What I'm hoping you get out of today, or out of this presentation, is more skills to help you go further as you try to find your ancestors and learn more about them. So, how does hinting work? It is not a perfect tool, but it is an amazing tool. And just knowing a little bit about how the different online databases use it can be quite helpful. So you should know that the online databases like Family Search or Ancestry or Find My Past or MyHeritage, those are sort of the big four online genealogical databases. They all use different algorithms. They have different databases that have been indexed by different indexers or by different machines or by different learning models for the machine to do indexing. They usually match based more on names and relationships than on places and time. So you have to be aware when you're looking at a hint, you still have to decipher if it's true or not. The hint is just a tool. It is also used for auto search functions that you would see on Family Search. Just remember that no online database hints to all their records. It's really hard to train an algorithm to hint to a record that has minimal information. So you might have a tax list for a county in Virginia, for example, that has 4 different men named John Smith who all pay taxes in that county. But because the tax record doesn't list any relationships or ages or occupations, no online database is going to write an algorithm to try to make that John Smith in the tax list match a John Smith in a marriage record. It's too difficult. So they hint to records that actually have enough information to provide good results. So census records, marriage records, birth records, military records. So records that have enough information about relationships, ages, places, that the computer can say, hey, these two people look similar. And then it's up to the human to decide if they really are the same person. So that's just something to be aware of. There's vast arrays of records available to you that the hint function can't find for you. So that'll be something we'll talk about, some of the resources you can use to find them on your own. But I think it's helpful to know it won't find every record, so that if you don't have any hints popping up, that doesn't mean there isn't more to learn about your family. So if you have a lot of information about your family on Family Tree, on Family Search, or Ancestry, and lots of other people are in there, you probably won't see a lot of hints. But if there are places in your tree that don't have a lot of records attached, or they're missing some information, filling in a little bit more usually generates a bunch of new hints. And so we're going to talk about, when we get to the case study, how you can find more information about your family and bring forth more hints beyond your own research. So hinting isn't just a one-time thing. The more information you put in, the more people you put in, the more that helps hinting find additional records. Let's go beyond, though. Let's say you've attached all the hints on the family you're interested in, and nothing else comes up and you just don't know where to go next. That's a really common thing. People are really excited. The tech brings them to a certain spot, and then they just don't know what to do next. So the number one thing you need to do is think of yourself as an explorer or a researcher who doesn't just stride out into the wilderness or doesn't just magically produce a new book or a new lab result. You have to first understand who else has been there, who else has tried to answer these questions, what other information's been gathered, who else wrote a map or drew a map, or who else wrote an article, that you get familiar with the terrain before you go exploring further. So you're going to analyze. I know that's sometimes a scary word to folks, but you're just going to read through and think through the stuff that's already been gathered. That can be family records, so things you have in your house or extended family have in their house that you might share online, on social media, or in a family archive. Family photos, memorabilia, certificates, written biographies or autobiographies, whatever it may be. So you want to just ask around. Do other people have things? Have other people store them on a different website than the one you use? That sort of thing. There may be interviews, or you might need to or want to conduct an interview. I just want to pause here and say, absolutely do that. Do a 20-minute interview with your oldest living relatives. Just ask them basic questions. If you have time and they have interest, do another 20-minute interview. You can just do it on your phone. You can upload it directly to Family Search, Family Tree, and preserve it there, or other kinds of cloud storage. So you might want to do that, to ask your oldest living relative, hey, just tell me what you know about the family. One of my brothers-in-law did that and found a county in Ireland they said their family was from. And without that information, he wouldn't be able to find their family, because it turns out someone named John Murphy, born somewhere around 1860 in Ireland, is too common. But once he had a county, he could do a more focused research. So interviewing family members, going through photographs and asking people who are there to identify the people in them, or if they've already been identified, to just familiarize yourself with the family, where they lived, what their houses or their entertainments looked like. Of course, surveying online trees. Family Search, Family Tree is an obvious one. MyHeritage has trees. Ancestry has public trees. There's many, many, many databases online that have public family trees. Many of them will duplicate information across because they're just put up by fellow descendants of the same ancestors. But you can usually tell if somebody's done a lot of work on a family. They have, 25 sources attached and 3 memories for every person. That's the one to spend the time on reviewing. Published trees would be like in a book. If someone's written a family history book or one name studies book, something like that. Sometimes you can find them on Google Books or Family Search books. Again, just networking out to your family, just to kind of see what's already out there. Some of this is to get familiar with what's known and what's not known on your family, but most of it is just to get to know them. Hinting cannot heart turn for you. Heart turning comes from engaging and knowing your ancestors. So this survey phase of analyzing what's already been gathered is also a really fun experience to just learn more about them and then see where that takes you. So let's talk about practical tools. Once you've picked a family you're interested in, poked around, learned a little bit more about what's already known or not known about them, where do you go? So Family Search Wiki is a great tool. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tools out there. There's dozens of YouTube channels and webinars and conferences and all sorts of websites. And it can be overwhelming. So Family Search Wiki. Just start there and it'll direct you to places, and you don't have to try to memorize or learn the whole landscape all at once. Family Search Wiki is kind of a map. It's a research wiki. It's organized geographically and topically. So if there's a group of people you're interested in or a place, you can use the wiki to learn about records from there. So this is the main page. You pick a place or a topic. You can also use what's called guided research, where the team at Family Search Wiki is trying to pull together resources and give you a step-by-step instruction. Look at this record first, then try this, so that it's not just a list of records and you're just trying to figure your way through it without a guide. I want you to be patient with the with the guided research, because it is a work in progress. So if your country doesn't have a lot yet, or your state, or whatever it may be, just be patient and check back. All the pages are laid out the same way. So I just chose Jamaica, but all of them will look the same way. And you'll notice it has online genealogy records. That is very useful to just show you what's already available online. And again, there's going to be a lot of records there that aren't hinted. So there will be things there you'll want to look at, but they'll be indexed and perhaps digitized. And over on the right, you'll see online learning. So that will be a place where there could be webinars, articles, things you could learn more about that location. So I hope you see the usefulness of Family Search Wiki. Is just all you have to remember is Family Search Wiki, and you type the place you're interested in, and then it's there to help you learn more about how to find ancestors from that place. So this will be on the slide presentation that you can have. There are many, many places to learn more about a specific location or a specific group of people or specific events that your ancestors may have lived through. And these are just some of the places you can go. The library here at BYU has produced a series of wonderful webinars. They update them regularly, produce new ones regularly. Of course, videos from past Roots texts, conferences, and then you see a couple other resources here, and of course, numerous YouTube channels on family history research. Okay, so let's do a case study. What does this actually look like? It can feel very abstract if you've never looked at Family Search Wiki, or if you've never looked at a record beyond the tree or beyond what's hinted to you or what's attached already to somebody's profile. How do you actually do it? So we're going to use an English example because that's my area I'm most comfortable in. And we're going to walk through how you do this when we look for Eliza Drinkwater and John Smith. This is Eliza Drinkwater in Gloucestershire. So you can see this is her profile on Family Search Family Tree. And you can see her parents are listed there and her husband, John Smith. So, number one, family history sometimes overwhelms people because they think they have to do everything all at once. And if you reflect back to the Elder Irene quote, he was looking at two people to decide which one was the right person. He wasn't trying to answer everything about everybody at once. So if you just choose one goal and just pursue that goal, yes, you will find other information about other family members. Keep notes. Just as an aside, keep notes of what you've looked at, and you can come back to them later. But kind of stay focused on the one main goal, and you'll feel more successful, and you'll feel more encouraged because you can do one piece at a time, and you won't feel so overwhelmed. And it also gives you a chance just to learn about the records and learn about your family in a more natural way. So if we go back to Eliza's profile, you see over on the right, research help. So if you've done family history on Family Search family tree, this is where you would see hints, if there were any record hint, to tell you, oh, here's a source that might be for the same person. But you'll notice there aren't any hints there. There's just a comment that the couple may have had children, because in their profile, you see John Smith and Eliza Drinkwater, but no children listed for them. So the algorithm knows to just look at the age of a couple and a marriage date and say, they biologically could have had children, theoretically. So maybe you should look for them. Just so you know, it'll cut off, if you put in a birth year for a woman, it will assume once she's past 40 that maybe she's not having other children, and so it may not pop up. Women did have children after 40. My mother had me when I was 45, when she was 45, not when I was 45. So that might not be perfect for your family, but it is helpful so that if a woman in her 20s or 30s pops up without children, the hint will say, hey, I think this person may have had children. And if a man or woman's not married, the hint might pop up and say, hey, I think this person might be married. That's just an automated response based on age and marital status. That is not some magical thing behind the scenes saying your ancestor was married and you just didn't know it, or your great-great-great-great-uncle or something. So don't assume it's correct. Just know that comes from an automated demographics. So this says, hey, maybe they had children, which is totally a legitimate thing to say maybe happened. So there we go, right? We have a precise marriage date for them when they're in their 20s. So that seems logical to think they might have children. All right, so we're going to do what I suggested you do. Let's review and analyze the information that's already there. So this is somebody born in the 1850s. Chances are your living family doesn't have information on them, or whatever they did have about them would already be there. If you recall, Eliza is already listed with her parents. So what happens a lot of times is people do research up their direct line of ancestors, and then they find all the siblings of their ancestors. And they'll usually find a birth date or a christening record for the siblings of their ancestors, and then they move on. And so what's happened here is a case like that, where Eliza's birth is known, her parents are known, but no one's gone to see if she has a spouse or children until somebody found a spouse for her. So let's see what's attached to her. Are there sources attached? Original records from her lifetime? Are there memories attached? Did descendants or other researchers find information about her or about her husband and post them on Family Tree? And then did anybody make a bunch of changes maybe recently? And that could be someone I could reach out to and talk to about doing research. Okay. There are no sources. You can see the little zero over there. There are no sources attached to John. So all we have to do is review the sources and things attached to Eliza. So you're doing two things. One, you're getting familiar with the details of Eliza's life so that when you go searching for other information about her, you have a background, that you don't accidentally attach a source for the wrong Eliza that lived 100 miles away or something like that, or is 10 years younger or something. Second, you're making sure all the sources already attached to Eliza are accurately attached, that they really are for the same person. This can happen a lot where there'll be a mixture of sources that belong to the person and some that don't, because first names and surnames are really common. Lots of people share them. They can share even very similar birthplaces and birth dates. And the hint function brings them up, and another user goes, that's about right, and attaches them and doesn't realize, oh, those are different people. That happens quite regularly. I'll give you a quick stat. In the mid-1800s in Wales, and this is true for England as well, people had one of 5 or 6 first names. The majority of people had one of 5 or 6 first names. So if you're talking about 50% of the population has one of 5 first names, Mary, Elizabeth, Sarah, Anne, you can have lots of Eliza Drinkwaters. You can also have variations on a name. So you could have a Betty Drinkwater, Eliza Drinkwater, Elizabeth Drinkwater, a Beth Drinkwater, and they could all be the same person, or it could be 4 different people. So you just want to take a minute to look through the sources and see, are they all coherent? Do they consistently have the same information that says, oh yeah, this is the same person? So I've just summarized those. I didn't want to make us click through all the images. So this is what's attached to Eliza's profile right now. It has 3 census records and her marriage record to John. So What I would love is for more people to spend more time in the census reading through the details. American censuses and Canadian ones are far more detailed, and so is Mexico, than the British ones. But just reading through them will give information that you're not going to get just from the index sometimes. But you can see this is for the same Eliza. 9 months old in 51, 10 years old in 61, 20 years old in 71, with the same set of parents, born in the same place, Sandhurst, Gloucestershire. So with a dad with the same occupation, this is the same person, the same kind of siblings, same siblings with the right age, birthplaces, names. That's the kind of stuff you want to do. The hint algorithm is really good for census records, particularly for men or for unmarried women, because if a woman's surname changes, it gets harder for the algorithm on Family Search. But this is the same woman in those 3 censuses, and then that's a good match for the marriage record. So I know it can be hard. You come across Family Search Family Tree, and it says she's married to John Smith, and here's a marriage record, and you're like, great, I already know who her husband is. There's no guarantee that the person who entered John Smith and attached that source actually had the right John Smith and the right Eliza Drinkwater. So that's what you're taking the time to do. Read through this, think about your ancestor, and also determine, is this the same woman? Well, it is. She's the right age. Her father's name is William Drinkwater, a laborer. That matches the census records for Eliza in 51, 61, 71. That's as good as you're going to get for proof. And then the witnesses, there was a Mary Ann Smith, so that's maybe John's relative, and a Thomas Dickerson. So it's not clear if he's related to them, but the name of her father, that she's living in Sandhurst, the place she's been born and raised in, and she's the right age, all says this is the same Eliza. So therefore, the John she's married to is the John we're going to go looking for. And now we know details about him from the marriage record. He's 22. He's unmarried. Bachelor and spinster just mean they weren't married. That's all that means. He's a mailman. He lives in Charlton Kings. And he's the son of Joseph Smith, a stonemason. So we picked up all these details about John Smith that weren't clear from his profile, hadn't been attached to his profile yet. Now we're ready to move on. It's worth pausing to think about, okay, if this is a place you've never been, you've never lived there, you've never traveled there, just get out a map. Just familiarize yourself a little bit with the places they live. So Sandhurst is right there between Gloucester, Cheltenham, and Tewkesbury. There are a bunch of other parishes in there, but Gloucester, Cheltenham, and Tewkesbury are going to be the larger, bigger places around. So if I see suddenly that the family moves to Gloucester or up to Tewkesbury, I'm not alarmed. That's less than 10 miles either way, especially as we're going to moving into the late 1800s, train transport gets better and better. I'm not concerned. But I can see that Gloucester, Cheltenham, and Tewkesbury are not far from the county border up there in the north. And you can see it over on the map of Britain on the left, that Gloucestershire is that red county. So the Severn River comes up there on the south, and then the tip of it touches on Bristol down in the south of Gloucestershire. So just a little bit, just maybe have a map up or print out a map or save a PDF of a historic map, and just to give yourself some familiarity so you can find, when you find other place names, it doesn't throw you off. Okay, so on the right-hand side of every profile in Family Search Family Tree are these auto search options where you can just click Family Search and the system will search everything you have about Eliza Drinkwater here and will search all of Family Search. So this is not hinting. Hinting is the system automatically bringing you data they think is a match that I've already explained does not touch on all the records the database has. This is you clicking Family Search and asking Family Search to search everything it's indexed. Again, that's not everything Family Search has, but everything they've indexed. And it's going to pull all the data about Eliza. And then the same thing for Ancestry, Find My Past, GeneaNet and Philae that are more European focused, or Google. These are all really powerful and useful tools. However, I want to suggest that you resist the temptation to do them at this stage of the research. Just give yourself more time to get to know Eliza and John. If you click Google at this point, you're going to get so much information and so little of it will be relevant, or so little of it will be unique that you can get lost in the weeds really quickly. So do a little bit more focused work, if at all possible, and come back to this later when you've got some more details filled in. Then you're better able to filter, refine the searching, and make sure you're getting relevant hits when you use these broader searches. I use them all the time. I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just saying maybe just wait a minute in your process. So we're going to start with the 1881 census because we had Eliza in 51, 61, 71, and her 75 marriage. So the next logical step is the 1881 census. You always want to work from the known to the unknown. That's another reason to just hold off a bit before doing this big general auto searching. Let's get a little more comfortable. Let's know a little bit more about our family first. And we know a bunch of stuff about her from 51 to 75. Let's just keep going, and the census records are available for us to do that. So if you didn't know anything about census records, you thought, okay, I got to learn about it, this is where you can come to Family Search Wiki, and you could learn about the census records if you wanted to first. Or you can jump in to searching the 1881. Now, I've gone to Ancestry. It's a better search algorithm for what we're going to do. It allows us to toggle and refine research filters a bit better than Family Search. That's why I've shifted to Ancestry. But I go back and forth between them and find my past and my heritage all the time. Okay, so one of the things to think about is, well, a couple of things. You have to use the name the person would be listed under at the time the document was created. So for women in the British sphere of influence, if they're married, they are going to appear in every official record with their married name. Nobody's going to list them by their maiden name. You'll be lucky sometimes if you can get their first name. But if they're not married, searching for them under their married name before they get married in that record isn't going to help you. So just keep in mind the chronology of your person in your family. That's another reason to be familiar with them so that you know, oh, their daughter got married in 1902, so in the 1911 census, she's going to be under a different surname. So just keep your eye out on that. And then this is my other big clue, or big suggestion. If you did the auto searching into Ancestry, you would have brought all the information about Eliza. So her parents' names, her husband's names, those 3 censuses, and siblings. And then Ancestry would want to search for all of them. And it's too much because she's only going to appear with her parents and her siblings in those 2 or 3 census records. She's going to appear in a lot of records with her husband, maybe some siblings, maybe one parent, who knows. And so you want to narrow down the information you give the search engine. Give it as little as possible that's still likely to yield specific results. So for me, what that usually is I use the name, and I try to give a good estimation on the birth year and a birthplace. And then I don't put any relationships. There's a time for that where that might help you narrow down if you're looking for John Smith, for example, when we get to him. But I tried to leave off all those details. Otherwise, the algorithm's going to try to find records that match all of those details, and it'll produce fewer results. But because we have really good information about her from the census records already, we can punch her in 1881. And you see there's Eliza Smith, married to a John, born around 1851, in Sandhurst, Gloucestershire. So the top one is our best match, and we know it's our best match based on the information you've already analyzed that was already associated with your Eliza. So you're already better prepared to handle these search results, especially because if you see the next person down, Eliza Smith, married to James, born about 53 in Sandhurst. That's really close. Eliza Elizabeth, both born in Sandhurst within 2 years. One living in Sandhurst, one living in Cheltenham, which you know from the map is not far away. It'd be really easy to confuse these 2 women if you hadn't paused and really thought about the records. I do this all the time. I'm typing something up, I'm looking at the record, her husband's name, John. I see a record that says James, and for a second I think it's the same person, because John and James, right? Or Eliza and Elizabeth, or Mary and Marianne, and you need to pause. So because you'd already paused and looked at all that stuff, you can tell that first entry is most likely our Eliza, right? It's got all the right information. So what does it have? I've extracted it out. You can see the original there. First off, always, always, always look at the original. Don't rely just on the index. The index doesn't, never have I seen an index that includes all the information. And you can definitely read it from there, but always look at the original. Make sure you're getting all the details. So they live in Cheltenham on 16 Chapel Street. So this is less than 9 miles from Sandhurst, where she was born and where she was in the census and where they got married. So there's John Smith. He's 27. Okay, he was 22 in 1875. That's spot on. He's a letter carrier. That's a spot on match for their 75 marriage. Her age is 30. That's a spot on match. And born in Sandhurst, perfectly matches the records, the census record and the marriage record. What we've picked up is Ampne Crucius as a birthplace for John. And we've picked up Annie, a 1-year-old daughter. So if you remember, way back when, our goal was, did John and Eliza have children? That was our main goal. And here we've already found one daughter. So, but we keep going. So you make notes about this. You can enter Annie on a family group record or on Family Search Family Tree, add the sources, but you don't want to quit on the census quite yet. You want to do all the censuses you have access to. They're great records. They give you a map for all the other records, so just keep going on the census. Here's our slide saying the comparison, that their occupations, ages, birthplaces, and residence all are consistent with the information we already know. I'm going to pause here and say you really need to keep notes. This is the hardest thing for students here on campus. Nobody likes doing it. I don't like doing it. If you've ever played a musical instrument or played a sport, it's all the boring stuff, like learning to do fingering on the piano or doing passing or dribbling drills for basketball. It's tedious, but it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run. You can do it on an Excel sheet, a Word table, Google Docs. There's even more complicated software you can use, but you just need to keep some kind of record of what you've done so that you don't repeat steps. There's lots of online sources to help you learn how to keep and organize research, but I just want to put a plug in for just basic notes that said what you had searched so you can save yourself some time. I will reference back. Goldie May was one of the resources I listed on a slide. They just do a little automated research log for you when you're online. We'll track every website you go to and the search terms you used. So that's a source you can use for free. Or they have a basic free version you can use, or just a simple Word table or an Excel sheet. All right, so this is what we found from the 81 census. This is the way it appears when you find it on Ancestry. And you'll notice over on the right, it has suggested records. These are hints. These are hints that you're probably used to. It'll be very tempting to jump around through all the hints. So this is another reason to keep some basic research notes, to just work systematically. You can always come back. So we already know about the 51, 61, and 71 for her. You see a 1901 and a 1911 that could be her. This is one reason I use Ancestry. Ancestry's algorithm is the only one I know of that's good about matching women with their original surname and their married surname. So you can see this is Eliza Smith and Eliza Drinkwater censuses popping up over there. So the algorithm is able to find her in both sets. It may not be right. Eliza Smith's pretty common, but these are pretty good hints usually, and you can review them. But go systematically. So go 91. Again, known to unknown. So just start in the 91. There we go. So they're still in Cheltenham. They're on a different street. But now they have children beyond Annie. So Annie's not there. It's just something to note at this point. All the children have been born in Cheltenham. So we're pretty sure they're not moving around a lot. We don't have to worry about them having a child 15 miles away. His occupation is still a match. Their birthplaces are still a match, and their ages are still a match. So this is the same family. They just have 4 additional children now. Then we move on to 1901. These are all from the hints. Hints bring them over. You just do a quick analysis. Go, yep, the ages, dates, places all match. This is the same family. By this point, so if we go back, they're at 11 Swindon Street in 1891. And in 1901, they're still at the same address. So we're definitely the same family. But their older children have left home. And they'd have 2 additional children that weren't there in the 1891 census. Just as a side note, when I was looking up Swindon Street, I found out that later these became kind of the slums of Cheltenham, like in the 1930s, and they were all cleared out and rebuilt. So if you wanted to go find them, you could go to Swindon Street, but you wouldn't be able to find their house anymore. And then 1911. So this is the last available census for England and Wales right now. The 1921 will be available. Well, if you have a Find My Past subscription, you can go see the 1921 right now. But for Family Search and Ancestry, you'll have to wait till early next year. So they live in Victoria Place. So maybe they got out before Swindon Street started to go downhill, which they wouldn't be living in slums as the letter carrier. That would have been a decent job. So all but their youngest daughter, Edith, has left home. But you'll notice the 1911 census, and I'll just tell you right now, the 1910 American census does this as well, and the 1900. Yes. It lists how many children a woman has had and how many are living and how many have passed away. So she says she's had 9 children and 7 are living. So let's analyze. Let's analyze everything we've learned from the census results and see what we need to do next. So the goal was to find, did they have children? Absolutely. We know they had children. We've identified a bunch of those children. Where do we want to go next? And we want to find those 2 children that we don't have record for. That we found 7 children. Where are the 2 she said passed away? So I just quickly put all the children in a little table and the years and the chronological list to see where it was most likely they would have had children born and die. Because you have to have a child born and die between the census years, because we've never seen these 2 other children. We can't account for them. And it could be that one of the children we have a name for passed away, and another child passed away. We don't know, but this is what it looks most likely where there's gaps. So that means we need to learn about, well, where are birth certificates? Where are death certificates for England? And assuming you don't know how to do that, because it's a new place for you to research, you just go back to Family Search Wiki. And you can go to the county or the country, or you can look at a webinar on YouTube or whatever it is, but I would just start at the wiki. Like, how do I find a birth certificate? How do I find a death certificate? I'm going to just be Family Search Wiki for you because it's kind of a little bit complicated right now with what's accessible online for England and Wales. But you can go straight to the government office that controls birth, marriage, death, adoption, and divorce records for the UK. And this is the General Register Office, gro.gov.uk. You have to make an account. The website is not designed for you. It is bureaucratic. So just be warned about that. But they have searchable birth and death indexes. And then you can download the image of the records for a fee. There's different levels of fee depending on how nice of an image you want to have. So I searched the GRO birth index for the Smith children born between their parents' marriage in 1875 and 1905, when she would have been 55-ish, right? So probably wouldn't have any children after then. You can choose to put the mother's maiden name. So I put Drinkwater, and I put that they were registered in Cheltenham because that's where we know from the census they lived. So I just want to point out here, this search is much more focused because we did all that other work, because we stopped and we looked at each census and we thought about the family. Now we can do a really refined search that's going to give us really high quality results. And this is what came up. So we should have 9, right? And there are the 9 children for Eliza and John. The 2 in red are the children we never found in a census record with them. So most likely these would be the children who passed away. So I searched the death index for Emily and Frederick. And I'll just go back one slide to show you. Emily is born in 76. December quarter just means the birth was reported in either October, November, or December of that year. She could have been born a little bit before that. So Emily in 76 and Frederick in 77 is when they're born. And so then I went to search the death index And I started in 76 with Emily's birth, and I went to 1881 because that was the census when Emily and Frederick don't appear, and they were too young to be living someplace else. And these were the results. And then I did pay the £2.50 to download the simple entry so we could see the real information. And Emily Smith, 2 years old. Now, the death index doesn't give me the mother's maiden name, but I knew I was searching for a little girl named Emily Smith in Cheltenham, and a little boy. And you'll notice they die in the same quarter. And then I downloaded the images. I paid £2.50, so £5 total, $7 for these two entries. And we see Emily passed away the 1st of December and Frederick the 3rd. And they both die of bronchitis. So it's quite sad. It is really, really common. So I want to pause and just prepare you. When you research your family, you will find some suffering. You will find loss and grief, and you will find flaws and even wickedness. And so it's good to just sort of have in the back of your head, it's not all going to be sunshine and roses all the time, because these are human beings. There's this great phrase from Wilford Woodruff in 1894. He says, "Undoubtedly, when we search for our family, we will discover some of them trod in muddy places." How could they not? Because they were human. So there will be muddy places, and that could be bad behavior, but it could also just be tragedy. It could just be sorrow and grief. And infant mortality before World War II in the West is very high. Depending on the place and time, as many as 50% of children did not make it to 10 years old. And it's quite common for 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 to not make it to 10 years old. So just wanted to make you prepared. I didn't go looking for that for this case study. That's just something you encounter pretty regularly. We have their birth and their death records. Other records are produced when those children were born and when they died, potentially. Church records may have been produced for a baptism or a christening, and a burial record in a churchyard or a cemetery record. So even if you already know the event, like their death, if there are other records around that event, search those too. One, just to know what the experience was like, just to know what happened next, but also to pick up clues about the family more broadly. So I looked at Church of England baptism records, and they did not have all of their children baptized in the church, but they did have Emily and Frederick. And so now, so they basically had, 2/3 of their children baptized. Or, over half anyway. All right, so I want to talk about the extra mile. I know this presentation is going to be like, well, what do you do when hints run out? What's the next thing? And I wanted to really concentrate on that, but I also want to give you some clues about how you can learn more about their context, even when we're talking about something from the 1850s or 19 teens of people you've never met and no one in the family knows anything about or has photographs from. And of course, you can keep uploading on Family Search Family Tree or Ancestry trees, and other relatives might connect with you there. But you can also just go looking to learn more about their historical context so that I can understand better the community they grew up in and lived and worked in. And I find that more heart-turning, just to pause and think about those little babies, and to pause and think about him being a mail carrier in Cheltenham. And this is a view of Cheltenham. And Cheltenham's has a kind of posh downtown area that's built in the 19th century. And so is he involved with that? Are they part of that? What does their life look like there? So I also want to pause and say, even in the nuts and bolts, even if, I'm looking at a census record or I'm keeping a research log, those can seem mundane. But I think it's still holy because you're pausing to think about this ancestor's life. You're pausing to think this person lived a life. They had choices. They made decisions. They didn't know. When they had Emily, they didn't know she was only going to live to be 2. They didn't know all the things that would happen to their family later or who their descendants would be. They lived through real time. I think that's holy. I think it's holy time spent writing a source citation or attaching a record. Even the nuts and bolts are still about building a relationship with somebody and pausing to say, this person was a unique individual, and I'm going to take the time to know about their life and record their life. I think it's okay. I think sometimes we feel like we have to go faster and generate a bunch of names, and I think we can pause and learn about somebody. And maybe someone in the family stands out to you, and you really want to pause and get to know one of them better than the others. I think that's sacred to do, to spend time letting your heart turn that way. So just as just one source, I could look at historical maps to see how Cheltenham is connected to other places, and it also has some historical information about Cheltenham. And then photos. I think we get used to thinking, well, my family doesn't have photos about this person, and we forget the internet exists. Just go looking for historical photos. So you can just Google Cheltenham, early 19th century, whatever it is. I Googled downtown Cheltenham, or maybe Cheltenham post office, because he was a letter carrier. John Smith, right, was a letter carrier his whole career. And up popped this colorized photo. And you can see over on the right, that's the post office, kind of with that neoclassical front, that was built in 1876. Well, John and Eliza got married in 1875. And by 1881, they're living in Cheltenham. So that's probably where he worked, or at least interacted there as part of his job. And you can see kind of how posh the promenade here is in Cheltenham. So then I think of the extra mile and a half is this family's particular context. So you can do the broad stuff, picture historical photos of the time, but you can also think about specifics like schooling or courtship or traditions or recipes they may have cooked. There are so many online databases for historical records of this kind of thing. So you could say, I'm curious what early 20th century Western England recipe books had. I'm curious what schooling was like in Gloucestershire. And you can find lots of information about that would tell you about their specific context. And I just thought, when I did this project, I thought, well, the obvious one for the Smiths would be infant mortality. Why did they lose 2 babies in 1878? So Google. I Googled epidemics, diseases, 1878 Gloucestershire, and I found an 1879 publication about this, about bronchitis deaths down in Bath, so a little bit south of where the family was living, and could read about how common bronchitis deaths were that winter. I found doing the same search, specifically narrowing in on 1878 when these children passed away, and found discussions about sickness insurance, so what we would call health insurance. And found an article written in 2010 about the decline of infant death rates, and they all said 1878. So they were picking out 1878 as this marker of when infant death rates started to decline in the UK. And they said some of it was insurance programs that provided women with maternity benefits. So that would be what we would call prenatal care, which improved access to medical care, provided supplemented income to new mothers, and promoted proper infant care practices. Such support contributed to a decline in European infant deaths after 1878. And the United Kingdom's national health insurance program began in 1911, but there were these companies offering what we would call health insurance. And then just better resources for prenatal care and postnatal care for women. So those babies died just before some of those programs and support and assistance came online. They're also living in a time with an incredibly bad air from coal smoke. So I found another article from 2020, British Medical Journal. The increase in death rate between 1838 and 79 from all forms of bronchitis combined was due primarily to the levels of atmospheric coal smoke. And then the decrease from 1879 to 35 was about progressively cleaner air. Bronchitis was especially a danger for the elderly and infants. For all those who died as infants, 15% was from bronchitis. So the Smiths family experience with bronchitis in that moment was really common. I don't know if that helps or makes it harder that they lost those two babies, but it gives you a context for how that's probably happening in a lot of homes in the late 1870s and large swaths of England. And probably, though, this is the other thing, is the improved air quality and health care and sickness insurance, health insurance, and the National Health Institutes of Health, the National Health Service in the UK started, probably all helped contribute to their younger children having a better chance at survival in infancy and young childhood. So we achieved our goal. We found Eliza and John's 9 children. We accounted for 2 children who never appeared in a census and may never have been known by descendants because they died young and maybe were never spoken of because of the grief, perhaps, or just because of distance away from the experience. Their younger siblings may have not known about them enough to pass on that information to descendants. So we found 2 children's birth and deaths and found the remaining 7 children who survived infancy, as well as John and Eliza from their marriage in 75 up through 1911. So now you just pick a new goal. Do you want to look at the children that survived infancy and see if you can find them in the census records we saw where they kind of dropped out of their parents' household as they aged? You know they all had to have lived to at least 1911 because Eliza said all 7 were still alive then. Did they get married? Where did they work? Did they move? You can go looking for them. You could learn more about John and Eliza after 1911, looking at maps, historic photos, city directories, their death records, burial records. Maybe there's a will from one of them. You could decide, I want to find John's parents. I know about Eliza back to her birth, but I only know John back to their marriage. And the marriage record gave me his dad's name and occupation. Maybe I find John in the earlier censuses and find his parents. Just pick one, and then go back and repeat the same steps. Assess what you already know, and carefully use Family Search Wiki to send you to the records you're unfamiliar with. And once you put all those kids in a family tree, I guarantee you, hints will pop up. So that's probably what I do first, is I put all the children in the tree and then click through the children and see, do all the censuses pop up? Do a possible marriage record pop up? So then I can sort of jumpstart the search for the kids as they left their parents' home. There's lots of possibilities. You only have to do one at a time. I want to end with just telling you, you can do this. There are many resources. There are so many people willing to help you. You can go as slow or as fast as you want. There's so much you can find beyond hints, and there's so much you can add that brings forth more hints so that you can learn more about your ancestors. Search, determine a goal, search a record, start close to you in time and work back, and just enjoy the time getting to know your ancestors and letting your heart turn to them as you do so.